G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is a video tutorial on drawing the female form. And any of you who have watched any of my other videos on this topic know that I enjoy this topic, but I have also struggled with this topic in the past. So I'm going to be using a lot of the things that I've learned in my process of learning to draw the female figure to simplify and make the process as approachable as possible. Now, I will also mention that this turnaround here that you can see of this lady that I was able to do a photo shoot with is part of a photo reference pack with hundreds of different poses and photos of her and a male bodybuilder that I've released online now recently that you can go check out. Link on the description and on the screen. And I've also released an ebook called Draw with Jazza Simple Anatomy. No, not Simple Anatomy, Easy Anatomy, one of those things. Anyway, so go check those out if you're interested in drawing the human form and a bit more of a detailed process so you can kind of go through it, practice it. There's an exercise book that you can print up and practice as many times as you want, and I've tried to make it as approachable and as valuable a resource as possible. Anyway, getting to it, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to break down this figure into something that is much more understandable, because when we look at this and we think, okay, I'm going to draw something like this, it can, looking at that, be a bit intimidating because we have a finished product with quite a lot of complicated and intricate structure to it. So we're going to talk about two structures while we're breaking this down. We're going to talk about the skeletal structure and we're going to talk about the muscle structure. Now with the skeletal structure, first of all, I'm going to make this image a lot less transparent, more transparent, whichever one makes most sense to be able to draw on it and you'll be able to see what I'm drawing. The first thing I do is draw the skeleton and simplify it. So in drawing the skull, rather than drawing a detailed skull, I will just draw the cranium using a circle, draw the jaw using this outline shape here, and then I create two lines, one indicating the direction of the face and the middle of the face, and another horizontal line wrapping around the skull showing the level of the eyes. And both of these things in combination with each other enable me to draw a skull on any angle and then add details later on and draw the face and the head and all that stuff. So I do that with all aspects of this form. Obviously it's going to be quite easy because I have a reference here that I'm working with and drawing on top of, but I'm going to do it on the reference first, break down the process and go into some details about the female torso, and then do it without a reference to show you how I would do it without a reference. So as you can see, we've done the skull. The next thing I'll do is kind of draw the spine and then outline where the rib cage will go, and I draw the convex shape underneath the rib cage most times and do some indication lines on the angle of the rib cage there. Now the hips, as you can see, they're quite wide, so I do quite a large sort of wide shape for the hips. Now something to keep in mind when drawing the hips of a female is that they're wider than the ratio of a male's hips to their shoulders. So when drawing a female's hips, you tend to usually do them a bit closer to the width of the shoulders, whereas with males they're usually a bit smaller in the hips than the shoulders. So I'll draw the shoulders here. The shoulders are actually less wide on a female than a male, and then the hips are more wide on a female than a male. So it tends to kind of meet somewhere in the middle on a female where they're both sort of even. As you can see, we have them kind of meeting like that. So in drawing the rest of my sketch skeleton, I basically use simple lines and shapes. The three areas that have the most mass to them are the torso or the rib cage, the pelvis and the skull. So as you can see, these areas have three large masses creating their shape in the sketch skeleton. So I have my sketchy skull, my sketchy rib cage and my sketchy pelvis. The rest I use just simple lines to create the indication of where these bones and joints will go. So I've got some simple lines indicating the bones and some little circles showing where the joints are, for example, in the shoulders and in the elbows. So that is how I construct my sketch skeleton. And if I hide my reference, you can see it's quite simple. Now, it doesn't look very female yet. It does with the hips and shoulder ratio, but there are obviously no breasts. And when drawing my sketch skeleton for a female, I also add the boobs. Even though it's a skeleton and there are no boobs on the rib cage of a female, they're pretty important to prioritize when drawing a female in making them feminine. So what I tend to do is I tend to draw kind of circles on the edge or the front of the rib cage, and then I kind of trail them up in something of a teardrop shape. Now, I don't draw the whole teardrop shape when I'm drawing the human figure or the female figure, but I use that as a bit of an indication that there is gravity, that it meets up here with the chest muscle and all this stuff, just to kind of really loosen things out. Now, a few things to keep in mind when making a female figure is that the line of the shoulders should equal or be very close to the line under the boobs. We want to kind of have a parallel sort of equal division there. And then the other thing to remember is that with a masculine male, we have wide shoulders and we have kind of a narrow waist and narrow hips. With a feminine female, we have medium width shoulders, wider hips, and a narrow waist. And so of course there are exceptions to the rule, but we're talking about cliches here, and when drawing the cliche female, we kind of have the waist kind of come in here and then kind of pop back out around the hips. And then when drawing things like the abdomen, we really don't go into too much detail, because with too much muscle definition and mass, they start to look quite masculine. So we don't want to go into too much detail there. Even with the arms, I tend to not subdivide things into bicep and tricep and all that, because it starts to look, again, quite masculine. What I do is I have a little rounded shoulder and I bring it down in so it's a little thinner and tapers into the elbow, and I work with much softer lines and softer transitions into the folds of the skin and the muscles and things like that. So you really want to keep in this whole idea of less is more. You don't want to overstate muscle geometry on a female figure or anything like that. And then we have things like the legs and the feet and la-dee-da. So we want to work with slender lines and nice flowing smooth things, less detail than we would on a male, and much more soft curves and soft lines. But then of course when I say curves, the middle of the body has a lot more in the way of curves than a male body would. So as you can see here, we've got a long slender neck, we've got a collarbone that's going to be showing and all that, and then we add all the details from there. But that is our female sketch skeleton. So I'm going to drag this across here. So I've got our two references. So you can see quite clearly that while the figures on the left of this female turnaround are quite complicated, we can break them down into very simple shapes and geometry that we can recycle and use in different ways when drawing the female figure. As you can see quite clearly here on this rear view of the female, the hourglass figure is a phrase that is used because in many feminine shapes we have this sort of a look. We have it taper into the middle and the waist, now we have it pop out on the butt, and it is very much like an hourglass, but just obviously less, hourglassy. You get the idea. There are a few things I like to mention to keep in mind when drawing a female figure, making it look feminine. One is an arched back. So when drawing a female figure, an arched back tends to create a bit of a feminine look. The other thing, of course, is this hourglass look, which you can see in the back and the front figures. Now, you don't want the shoulders to be too pointy or broad, so we kind of taper those off and, of course, put some more accentuation on things like the chest and the hips and all that. But overall, in terms of key things to remember, we want a long slender neck that is quite feminine. A visible collarbone is quite feminine as well. Of course, working with things like the boobs and the hips and the waist, but also very minimal lines when it comes to muscle geometry. So when drawing the abdomen, we really just want to show just an indication of where those muscles are, maybe an indication of the bottom of the rib cage, but we don't want to draw individual muscles unless the character that we're drawing really calls for that specifically. The other thing too is minimal use of lines and detail and things like the arms and that muscle geometry, so we wouldn't really go into detail with the obliques or the shoulders or the chest muscle or things like that. We really want to work with minimal lines and of course popping it out here with the butt. Now when drawing the butt, we kind of pop it out, but we tuck it under until it's in the leg there like that. So the butt kind of has its own little bulbousy shape there. I like big butts and I cannot lie. So I hope this video has been useful just to kind of break down the female figure. When drawing the female figure, they're the things I like to keep in mind. I draw a sketch skeleton first, I really simplify it, start with the rib cage and the pelvis, work with a wider hip to shoulder ratio, really slender lines and slender shapes. A few other things to keep in mind that are quite feminine. Broken wrists is a sign of femininity, as is pointed feet. So pointed feet is something that can also add a lot of sex appeal when drawing a female figure. figure, making it look feminine. It makes the butt pop out a bit, makes the heels pop out a little bit, an arched back, a long slender neck, visible collarbone, and less detail overall, working with really slender geometry. So I hope this video has been useful. Once again, if you're interested in drawing more of the female and male figures and using a whole bunch of different reference files, as well as checking out the Easy Anatomy book that I've created, make sure to check out the link in the description. Otherwise, thank you for joining me, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel to see new content every week. Check out more of my stuff by clicking the annotations over there. You can get the reference files for this tutorial by clicking the link in the description, and if you want the reference files for all the tutorials I've ever made, check out the tutorial archive. If you're looking for a great place to collaborate, explore, or share your own content, head over to newgrounds.com. That's it for now, and until next time, see you later.